I adopted Edgar in 2005, when he was only a couple of months old, and he imprinted on me almost immediately. He would come to me or follow me when I called his name, and at night he would sleep on my shoulder with his claws in my hair and a constant purr in his throat. He was only 6 when, on September 7th, 2011, a car hit him and killed him just a few feet across from my house. Whoever hit him moved him to the gutter across from my house for my dad and me to find later that afternoon. Seeing Edgar and making the mistake of touching his dead body was one of the worst moments of my life. I had a hard time coping after that. My behavior was disorganized and erratic. The day after his death, I found his flea collar in the street, picked it up, and have kept it to this day. I still have recurring dreams of Edgar coming to me, alive again, tangible to my touch but invisible to everyone else. No other death has affected me this badly. I was consumed by the thought that I could have prevented his death, if only I had had him declawed as a kitten, so that he could not climb the fences in the backyard. Or else I should have never let my parents install the doggy door, which gave Edgar and his calico sister Annabelle access to the outside. As early as 2 months after Edgar's death, I began to write poems and draw pictures to mourn him. These poems were never very sophisticated. I would write them on anniversaries of his death as a way to document my feelings about it. The earliest one is titled November 7th, 2011, and goes like this. What do cats do when they leave the house? What adventures did you have all the way across the street? It's been 2 months now. 2 months since that car came and broke your neck, your skull, my heart. Edgar Allan Poe was 40 when he was found in a gutter, dying. You were 6 when I found you in a gutter, dead. I keep having dreams about you, holding you, petting you, pressing my nose into your fur. But in the dreams you're always torn away from me, just like you were in real life. Edgar, my Ed, my buddy, my baby, I miss you so much. What happened to you wasn't fair. I want you back. God, please God, let there be a heaven, and let me meet my baby there. The emotion here is raw, and the language is unsophisticated. This is something I would never try to publish in a journal, but it was useful at the time. The most recent poem was essentially written for a class, but I put a lot of real emotion into it. Note, by now the 4th anniversary of Edgar's death has passed, but the poem, called May 5, 2015, refers to it as being 3.5 years. The cat we received was big and orange and striped, and looked nothing like you, per my request. We skinned it first. We couldn't get it all in one go. We had to leave the fur on the feet. The teacher said we should. The skinning was easy. We just had to rub our hands between the skin and muscle to break the connective tissue. I think back to when I would play with the muscles in your front legs. I know what those look like now. I feel my own arms, and know the difference cannot be great. A muscle is a muscle. The cat we received died on its own in the pound. That is why my school received it. No one had to kill it. Not like you were killed, and moved to the gutter just across the street from our home while I was at school, left hard and cold and stiff for my father to find. Aaron, he said, have you seen Edgar today? I saw a cat in the street. And right away I knew it was you, even before I saw you myself, because it had to be you, because you were too good to keep. And after you were gone, I couldn't sleep, not without your purring or your claws in my hair. And I hated your killer, and I hated my bedroom, and I asked my teacher, please don't give me a black cat to dissect. So she gave me an old fat tabby, and I learned one way to skin a cat. The job wasn't easy on my heart, but there was no blood, and after the skin was gone, it didn't look like a cat. You don't look like a cat either. You sit in a jar on the mantel above my father's fireplace, alongside Dakota and Ginger, in an urn as black as your fur. 6 years alive, 3.5 years dead. Will I be done mourning once you've been gone as long as you were here? Will you stop crossing my path in my most vulnerable dreams? Will I forget how hard you were when I touched you and how I screamed? Or is this pain one that will follow me all my life, just as you followed me all your life? Unlike the very direct poems, my earliest drawings were only oblique references to Edgar. If a fictional character had a relationship with a cat, I drew them with that cat in order to make myself feel better about the fact that I had lost mine. Otherwise, I would just draw myself crying and call it a day. It took me a while to actually draw Edgar. The first drawing was cheesy and not very sophisticated. Recently I had read the famous Rainbow Bridge poem, which claims that all pets wait just outside of heaven for their owners to come meet them again, and then everyone would go to heaven together. With that in mind, I drew Edgar greeting all the other pets I had lost throughout my childhood. When I uploaded the picture to Facebook, I even received a commission from one of my father's co-workers to make a version for their 3 past chow dogs. The original picture wasn't a very honest one, though. It was a calculated attempt to make myself feel better about the loss. A more honest picture arrived in the middle of a real bout of grief. It mourned the fact that I hadn't been sleeping well without Edgar there to purr in my ear. That drawing is the last one I've done of Edgar. I've continued the fan art strategy of passing on my pain to fictional characters, or even basking in fictional characters' happiness with their cats. But I started to wonder, was there any merit to my method of coping through drawing and poetry? Especially the drawing, since that was my most common outlet. To answer this question, I picked up a book that seemed like it would help, The Art of Grief, The Use of Expressive Arts in a Grief Support Group, edited by J. Earl Rogers. This book is a step-by-step guide to running an 8-week grief counseling program, in which each week handles a different type of art. First, oral history, then journaling and poetry, then an activity called sand tray, in which the participant acts out their story with small figures in a sand of tray. Fourth came interpretive dance and yoga, then the art of collage, which could be replaced with painting if the group wanted, then mandala making with music as a background, then dramatic acting, and finally ritual making. Throughout each of these sessions, the idea is that the creative arts can help a person delve deeper into their own unconscious and tell their story of grief in a more honest, self-conscious way. For example, during one sand tray workshop, observed by the author, a man whose son had died in the car of a drunk driver arranged a figurine representing his son on one side of the tray, with another figure and an overturned toy car, while at the other side of the tray were several toy police cars and a figure which the man said represented himself. Between the 2 clusters of figures was a huge expanse of empty sand. After meditating on his sand tray for several minutes, the man told his counselor that he finally understood that it wasn't just the loss of his son he couldn't cope with, but instead he was held back by the feeling that he should have been able to rescue his son, despite the distance between them at the time of the accident. Without this activity, the author argues, it would have taken the man years to understand the real roots of his grief. This was all very interesting to me, but what I really found myself most interested in was at the back of the book, after the 8 sessions had been described in full. What I found was a painting technique called touch drawing, invented by a woman named Deborah Koft Chapin. According to Deborah, she discovered touch drawing in 1974 on accident by playfully moving her fingertips on a paper towel that had been placed over an inked glass plate. When she lifted the paper towel off the ink surface, she saw the traces of her touch imprinted on the underside of the towel. Just like that, she realized that she had found a simple, direct process that had the potential to become a new and powerful form of creative expression. In this book and on her website, touchdrawing.com, she advocates the process as a way for a person to connect with their soul using their hands as a bridge. The art is a product of the moment and demands very little planning. The process is very simple. First, you prepare a flat, non-porous surface. I used a sheet of plastic in my attempts, but glass would also work. Next, you use a soft rubber roller to roll a thin layer of water-solvent oil paint onto the plastic. Then you place a thin piece of paper on top of the paint. I made the mistake of using paper that was too thick at first, so I worked blind on most of my images. However, if you use tissue paper, such as that you would use to stuff birthday gift bags, it is a lot easier for the paint to seep through, and you will see what you're doing. After the paper is down, you just use your fingers, palms, and fingernails to press your image into being. It's a relaxing process that allows your mind to wander while your hands work. Deborah Koft Chapin suggests several activities for touch drawing, many of which I tried myself. These activities have names such as inner face, inner body sensations, imaginal body, relationship or situation, and cloud gazing. The activity I focused on was inner face, which asks the artist to try and determine what their face feels like from the inside, and to draw it that way. I did this mainly by exaggerating the features of my face, which I am most conscious of. This means that my 3 self-portraits ended up with an emphasis on my nose, the bags under my eyes, and my round cheeks. It was pretty inspiring to feel my image under my fingers, and to talk through my feelings while my boyfriend recorded me. While I did 3 images of myself, I also did one of my grandmother, one of my mother, one of my boyfriend, and 3 of Edgar. Each drawing of Edgar was done very fast and loose, as I was not using any reference images and could only use my feelings and memories to draw on. This was a little hard for me to do. I felt like I was doing something wrong by not having the images be absolutely faithful to the real-life counterpart. But as the process went on, I accepted the fact that accuracy was not the point of the exercise. Rather, the truth of the emotional process is what mattered. As long as I had an open mind and heart during the activity, I could not be doing anything wrong. It's for this reason that I would recommend touch drawing to anyone looking for an artistic outlet for their grief. Traditional painting and even poetry writing can be daunting to many because of all the formal rules that come with those media. Touch drawing takes away everything that could come between an artist and immediate, tactile expression. Obviously, no art medium can entirely alleviate one's grief, and in the case of severe grief, it would probably be better to find treatment through either group or personal grief counseling. But touch drawing is a very good way to get in touch with one's emotions, and maybe even one's soul. I can definitely say that drawing Edgar again after several years, especially in such a hands-on way, made me feel closer to him in a way I haven't felt in a long time. When I stroked his back and ears and tail into existence, it was like petting him again. I could practically hear him purr for me again.